Hi, this is Amy. In this video, I'm going to be doing an APA workshop where you'll have the chance to learn and practice when and how to cite using the 7th edition format of APA style. So the first thing I like to talk about in these workshops is just generally the idea of using others' work. Basically, any researcher, whether they are a student or all the way up to a PhD that's been studying a particular subject for years, doesn't know everything there is to know about any given topic. So you do need to go out and get information, and that's going to come from the work that other people have done. You can use this information to provide background, foundational context for the work that you're doing, or to support specific claims that you make. So I always like to refer or think back to this quote of Isaac Newton's that says, "If I have seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants." And that really just reminds me that the advancement of human knowledge is a collective endeavor. We're all really working together and sharing our discoveries to find out more and learn more about the world. So moving into why do we cite the sources that we use? Obviously, you want to support your claims. You do also want to give credit to the author of the information, whatever the source of the information is. You also are going to attribute the quality of the information to the source where you got it. And you're allowing your reader to track down the source if they want to learn more. So this is something that is a service to your reader. You're providing them enough information to where they could find the original source and get more. I guess it's something that is helpful as well for you as a researcher, just because if you're doing research on a topic, you may find that a particular study that's cited sounds like it might be helpful to you. And so the researcher whose work you're using has given you enough information that you can track down the source as well. So anyway, I just think it's a wonderful way to share, where you get the information, acknowledge, who you got it from and everything like that. You're also putting yourself in the scholarly conversation. So you're engaging with others' work, and you can do that by adding to what they've found, agreeing. You can even disagree. You can even have a contention. But you're basically putting your voice and your research in conversation with the work of others. So that's really awesome, because you're all scholars as well. Even if you're a student, you may not feel like it, but you definitely are. So that's great. All right, so moving into the publication manual, I just really briefly wanted to show what that looks like. You can probably check out a copy of this at the library or buy a copy if you want to have the full text of, the authoritative source. Now, the thing about this manual is about 250 pages long, so a lot of that is really geared toward people who are submitting articles or work for publication in a scholarly journal. And much of that does not apply to students for work submitted for grades. So there are some other resources available to help you. I have made the Roberts Library APA guide, and the URL for that is listed on the screen there in blue. Feel free to check that out. It's got a lot of information on there. You can also go to the Purdue OWL's APA page. I really, really like this page. It's extensive, up to date, lots of good information there. It'll show you the formatting and then give you examples of how to apply that format, not just for the individual citations, but also for the document overall. And then the last thing we have on this page is a little emoji lady that is meant to represent me, but more broadly, all librarians or even your instructor who may be able to help if you have questions that you can't find the answer to. So let's move into when to cite. Anytime you're using someone else's intellectual property, you absolutely would need to cite that, just to indicate where you got it from and to distinguish the sources that you're using from your own original contributions. That's just a fundamental practice that is integral to academic integrity. It's something, it's a common courtesy that researchers, just do. So the things that you would not have to cite, now you don't have to cite facts, which are commonly known by your audience and easily verified in reference sources. So if you're saying, Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States of America, you don't need to cite that. If you did not know something before you started researching, you may feel a little uncomfortable not citing it because you're like, I did find it somewhere. When in doubt, feel free to cite your source. It's not wrong to cite if you did get something somewhere else. Now, the only thing you absolutely do not ever need to cite is your own original contributions. So if you have your own opinions, your perspectives, your experience, findings from a research study that you did, no need to cite that. So this is just general guidelines on when to cite. Now, looking at the elements of citation in APA style, you can see that there's two different things that we need to do. The first thing is an in-text citation. So you can see on the top here, I have a brief mention of the author's last names and the year. And then on the references page at the end of my paper, I'm going to have all of the publication information listed. So basically your in-text citation leads your reader to the references page where they can find the full information about the source. So that's what that would look like. And let's go ahead and take a look at in-text citation more in depth. There's basically three different things that you can do in an APA paper to cite in text. You can do a quote, and with that, you're going to not only include the author and year, as we saw, author or authors, as we saw in the previous example, but you also want to include the page number. So with quotes, you do also include the page number. You do indicate with the quotation marks that it is the same wording from the original source. You can also paraphrase. Paraphrasing, of course, is to contextualize and explain someone else's, information, I guess their words or their ideas in your own words. And then with that, you're only going to need to use the author and year. You can see that APA lets you do sort of paraphrase with the citation, not just at the end of the sentence, but kind of embedded in the sentence. And so you're going to have your author's name and year in the paraphrase. No need for an additional citation. You do need to have those two elements. APA is really I guess I would say APA values currency, and so by putting what researcher and what chronological timeline of the research right in the beginning of your citation, it can help your reader just kind of understand where that falls in relation to the other work that you're using. So let's look at some examples. This is a direct quotation from an article that I found about the use of AI in customer service applications. So I have a direct quotation, 70% of Facebook Messenger chatbots were failing to fulfill user requests. I have my author's last names, I have the year, and then I have the page number. Okay, I have the quotations indicating that it is a direct quotation, the original wording. Now, I did also paraphrase this, and you can see one study found that most Facebook chatbot interactions were unsuccessful. So same idea, but I'm not focusing as much on the exact number or the original wording, just kind of the main idea. And with that, I have the author's last names and year. Same thing here with my citation written as part of the sentence, okay? So let's move into paraphrasing. I did show you an example of paraphrasing just now, but overall what you're going to need to do when you paraphrase is to introduce and restate another person's original ideas in your own words. So try not to follow the author's sentence structure or sequence of ideas, and do cite with parentheses as shown earlier. I always say that if you like the way that the original author worded it, you can't think of a way to word it better, go ahead and just quote. I don't think that there's a need to do linguistic gymnastics to, avoid quoting. However, I am not grading your paper, and some teachers do not agree with that. So feel free to check with your teacher about that before you go quote too much. One value of paraphrasing is that it does show that you understand, and you're also relating a little bit more naturally the information that you found. Too much quoting can feel a bit choppy for your reader. Okay, if you are quoting, it's really helpful to introduce your quote, so make sure your reader understands why the quote's there, who's saying the quote, and not just slapping quotes into your writing, because that can feel a little disjointed and distracting. Okay, all right. So moving into how to paraphrase, feel free to pause the video, take a look at this. This is just general good guidance. It's helpful to kind of understand what you're paraphrasing, put it away, try to explain it in your own words, and make sure that you're covering the main points and not unintentionally retaining any original wording. You can see the link down here from where I found this guidance. And then here's an example that you can pause the video and practice if you would like to try to paraphrase this particular quote this is actually a chunk of text from an article. So I don't have quotation marks around it, but it is the original wording, so try to paraphrase if you would like. All right, so let's look at a quiz. Between A, tutors typically assist students in learning a specific subject, and B, students learn faster with a tutor than by themselves, which would you need to cite? Feel free to pause, take a minute to think about it. And let's go to the answer, and the answer is A, would not need to be cited. B would need to be cited. I made it sound like the answer was A, but the answer is actually B, data that comes from another source, okay? And so this is what that would look like in the body of your paper. You have your author's last names, you have your year. That is a paraphrase. That's not the original quote. They have specific percentages. But yeah, so, and you can look this up if you want to read more about it. It's an older article here, but you can see the references page, how that would look. All right, so I do need to address a couple of common citation questions because these do come up frequently. First question, what if I'm citing information that comes from more than one source? So if you're making a claim that's backed up by more than one source, that makes you look really good as a researcher. You have a very a solid claim there, right? The answer here, of course, this does depend on the information. If it's common knowledge or factual, you don't need to cite it. You don't need to tell me that 5 places say Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States of America. However, if it does need to be cited, you can see the example in here. In my research for graduate school was about plagiarism. So this is actually a sentence from a paper that I wrote. And you can see I have several different authors cited. I'm listing in the same parenthetical note here and separating with semicolons. So lots of good evidence there to support that particular point. Okay, question 2. What if I'm using a lot of information, but it's all from the same source? A lot of students seem to believe, and I believe that at one point in the past I also thought this way, but that if you are writing a whole paragraph and it's all coming from the same source, you can just write the whole paragraph and put a citation at the very end, and it just applies to the whole paragraph. That is not correct. It does make it look like you're only citing that last sentence. So you do need to go through sentence by sentence and cite each sentence in which you use the information. So you can see I have my little example down here, and I've tried to show some different ways that you could word it so that it doesn't sound too repetitive as a reader. But yeah, you do need to cite the source each time you use it. Be clear sentence by sentence, okay? All right, so let's look at the references page. We've talked about the in-text citations. We want to also talk about the references page. These references listed here I got from a computer citation generator and basically pasted them on here. There are issues with each reference. There are a few formatting issues, and these represent the sorts of errors that I do see frequently with computer-generated citations. So feel free to pause the video, take a look, try to identify the errors. I'm about to show you where each error is, and I've got my little arrows pointing to the different problems. So think about that stuff, and let's move on. All right, the references page. So not only do we want to have all of our references listed, we want to have the page formatted correctly. I have videos on that as well. Basically, you're going to have a page called References with all of the sources cited in the body of your paper. These have the full publication information. The full page is double spaced, and citations are listed alphabetically. We also don't indent the first line, but we do indent the following lines in an entry, and that is called a hanging indent. I have a video showing just that if that's all you need. But this is what that would look like, okay? Some APA notes with authors. You only use the first and or middle initial if one's listed. You do not need to use people's credentials such as MD, PhD, etc. If multiple authors are listed, you do list them in the order they list themselves. For example, this last citation here, you might be tempted to alphabetize these authors. Do not do that. They did that on purpose, okay? But on the page, top to bottom, you do want these to be alphabetized. And also you'll note that only the first letter of an article title or a book title is capitalized, with exceptions for the first letter of the subtitle, any initialisms or acronyms, or proper nouns, okay? All right, moving into DOI database information, you have to include the basic publication information. APA says include the DOI. If there's no DOI, list the article's URL. Finally, I have to always say this, your teacher may have guidelines that supersede official APA practices. Be sure to read your syllabus and or assignment sheet to check. I'm telling you standard official APA stuff. Your teacher may have some exception that they want you to do. They are grading your paper, not me, so be sure to do whatever they say. So hope this video was helpful. Best of luck on your projects, and feel free to reach out to me